Hello again, I'm Stephen Wells, the host of the Motoring Weekly podcast for the Australian Historic Road and Racing community, and this is episode 167. Firstly, a little promo for the podcast. We are still floating around the top 200 for Australian automotive podcasts via Podcharts, and we hit an all-time high of number 15 last month. So a big thank you for all the listeners, whether you listen via a podcast player, the website or YouTube. Now back to some more interesting content. This is another interview from the volunteers of the Australian Motor Heritage Foundation. I first met them late last year and published an overview in episode 123. The foundation considers itself a mini Smithsonian for the Australian automotive industry, including motorsports and motorcycles, and they even have a small collection of aviation materials. In episodes 147, 157 and 166, I covered the vast magazine collection, the race programs and results, and now it's time to talk audio-visual content. I met with Peter Tomlinson, who is tasked with curating all of the audio-visual content that has been donated over the last few years. It includes digitizing the old media formats so that the content is safe for future use. Here's the chat with Peter. So I'm at the Australian Motor Heritage Foundation with Peter Tomlinson. And Peter, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to get a feel of your background before the foundation and your involvement here, both from an automotive and also from sort of work and how you sort of got to the point where you are today.
Okay, well, strangely enough, I'm not related to the motor industry. I'm more from the food industry. I'm a food technologist. Okay. But my interest in cars started when I was 13 and 14, when we used to ride around the paddock out Richmond Way and down around the lowlands. So I've been driving since I was 14 in various cars. My first one was a Hillman Minx, and we graduated to Datsun 1600s and various other cars from there.
So was that on paddock? So you're out in the countryside, so you were able to drive sort of unofficially on fields and farmland?
Well, unofficially it was on paddocks, but if you know the lowlands area around Richmond, it's a fairly scarce sort of place, and so we had the opportunity to ride a few dirt roads and learn some rally skills at the same time.
Yeah, and then you sort of got into competition. What sort of competition were you involved in?
I started with the Sydney University Car Club and doing motor carners. A guy introduced me with the Datsun 1600 to doing motor carners. That was even before I got my licence at 16. And then from there it went into doing some lap dashes, a few sprints. I'm a member of the Mazda Car Club and then the ARDC and the Triumph Club and various others. So lap dashes then progressed into getting a full-blown RX-7 race car, improved production. I did the Super Sprint series and won that in 99, and then went to improved production racing and did a series of races, including the 6-hour race here at Eastern Creek.
Okay, and you've currently got a Triumph TR7 V8.
It's an unusual car.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about my background a little bit because I have had Triumphs as well. I saw a red TR7 V8. Was that yours down at Goulburn?
No, right. No. I was at Goulburn on a photography expedition with my brother and sister-in-law Annette, who was doing the MG Club. Yeah. But my Triumph days have been sort of... I've done a lot of lap dashes here at Eastern Creek. I plan on doing a few gear race circuit days and that sort of thing. But I'm still in the process of ironing out all the bugs from the Lucas Electrics.
Right.
I've just spent a couple of $1,000 on a full fuel injection overhaul system and that sort of thing. But it's going well now, so I'm looking forward to spending a lot more time on it.
And is that an original Triumph V8 or is it the Rover?
No, it's original Pro Series TR7 and it was converted to a 3.9 litre Rover V8. Yeah. And it goes pretty well.
Yeah.
And it's been a track car for many, many years, but it's always been registered, so it's a good road car as well. Yes. A little bit rough, but it's a good road car.
Yeah. I went through two normal TR7 road cars in my youth. One that had a split drive shaft spline that meant that if you lifted off, it would steer itself. And I had one that I had an accident in with my old school teacher, and it got written off. The second one I ended up selling to an RAF pilot who saw it in the garage when I was at uni and thought, he's not using it, I'll take it off him. So he bought it off me to rebuild it, and that was early 90s.
Right,
So
okay.
late 80s and early 90s I ran 2 TR7s, and I loved them. They were great bits of kit. A little bit unreliable because it hadn't been maintained properly before I bought them.
Right.
But I hope that the guy that bought the one that did survive actually enjoyed it over the years.
Yes.
So you've always had an interest in cars and motorsport and bits and pieces. What about overseas? Have you been overseas and raced, or have you just been
Not
a
overseas
spectator?
racing, except in New Zealand. I spent 3 years in New Zealand and did a few lap dashes over there in the Hamilton Car Club and various places like that. But that was just borrowing cars and just having a bit of fun. So yeah, New Zealand's about the only place I've raced. But I've been overseas and looked at a few race meetings over in the US.
Yes. Yeah.
Watkins Glen was amazing.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I've had the opportunity to sort of view it internationally as well as in Australia.
Yeah, I'd like to go to some of the US race meetings, whether that's NASCAR or, again, Watkins Glen has got such a history.
Yes.
It would be fascinating to just drive up there. And I listened to a historic racing podcast out of the UK, and they've got an American guy on, and he was born at Watkins Glen.
Wow.
So that's his formative years for going to that circuit and watching the racing, and now he's back doing the historics there.
Yeah, I've just been watching a DVD on Can-Am and the history of Can-Am.
Yeah.
That was absolutely phenomenal.
I would have loved, if I ever had a time machine, I would go back to the Can-Am days, because that was just unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. The stories that came out of that with Jackie Stewart and Roy Donahue and various others was just amazing.
And I've listened to interviews with Brian Redman, where he's spoken about some of those cars and not sleeping the night before because they were just so hairy to drive. So with that involvement in cars and driving and motorsport, what brought you here to the foundation?
Interesting that my interest was mainly from the computer and the digital side of things, because I've been working with computers ever since the Commodore 64 days and the Apple IIe, all that sort of stuff. Just out of interest. And I've always been using computers and digital media, and I love visual digital media and stuff. I just started here at the AMHF with just providing a couple of programs to Brian Golding and a few of the other guys, race meeting results to Rod. And from there it said, well, we've got all these videos and things downstairs, but nobody ever does anything with them. Right. So what started with about 200 hours of DVD and video has sort of grown to over 4,000 hours of digital media and total media altogether. So it's just sort of grew from just initial introduction to, can you sort this out, and then we'll take it from there.
So people were giving VHS and other tapes to the foundation, and they were just in a box downstairs. And
we've got everything from pneumatics to big cinema reels to 8mm DVDs and VHSs and Betamax. I've had to set up a system at home where I've got 2 DVDs, 2 VHSs, a Betamax, and two computers recording and converting different formats. And the reason for converting is to sort of maintain the quality in digital format. And unfortunately a lot of the VHSs are starting to lose their quality. So converting them to digital before we lose that quality is important from a history point of view. Yeah,
and especially film deteriorates, doesn't it, over time? So you've got to get it into a form that will last a bit longer. And then what happens to that digital content that you've now got? You catalogue it. Is it then for use for other people to then view?
It is. As I said, converting it to digital, and my main usage for it is to promote it within different car clubs. Like say, if I'm going to the MG Car Club in Canberra in 2 weeks' time, basically I have a full USB of over 40 hours in an interactive media format that I can present that history.
Okay.
Going back to the very early days in the 30s and that 40s from the right through to the current media,
So is that's more than just a slideshow? That clearly is quite an interactive set of media that you've got.
It's a fully interactive in that you can load it up, click on, like I've got the whole motor racing history of races and events from 1928 through to 2000 in interactive format. So you can pick the year, pick the race meeting, pick the circuit, and then play that at your leisure.
Yes, yeah. And then through the foundation, you could potentially look at the program that related to that. The race results maybe also be here. So from a historical perspective, you could start in one area, and then the question will be, what about the results? Oh, do you have any footage of it? Yes, we do. So
that's where I'm working very closely with Rod and with Brian. That we have a program or we have a race result, I can link it to the video.
Yes, yeah. So you're able to convert all sorts of different formats into a standardized structure?
Yes, all the formats, for the exception of the 16mm and 8mm, which we tend to get sent out for specialised converting. I can do most of the others and, convert it and digitise it.
Yeah.
The amazing thing that these days is with AI, you can actually improve the quality of that digital media so much more.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and take it back to what it would have been when it was first recorded.
Yes, that's exactly right. I've just picked up from a racing driver who raced at Bathurst for quite a few years. He was a photographer at the 1965 Tasman meeting, and he took home video of Jim Clark when he won the race, and I've converted that into MP4 format, and we're going to put it through AI and improve the quality of it. So it's quite rare home video that nobody else has,
And so did you go and video stuff beforehand, or did you're talking about you had a lot of interest in computers and making them work for you. Did you also take footage of your own meetings?
Not necessarily footage. I was more of a photographer, still 35mm still photographer. And I'm tending to use other people's video to convert it. I never saw myself as a cinematographer, but I was a pretty good photographer. But and I'd leave the best of the video stuff to other people.
Okay. And so, do you also look after the stills then for the foundation and all of those images?
At this stage, no, but I do have some particular events where people have given me stills and I've put them into a video format, into a presentation.
Yeah. Okay. So most of the work you do do you do audio as well, as we're doing a podcast?
I have to do corrections to audio in many cases. A lot of the older videos don't have any sound. So I tend to borrow other people's soundtracks from racing and gear changing and revs just to sort of add some value to the videos.
And a bit of colour to it, effectively.
Yes, effectively, yes. Because unfortunately, just watching a still silent video is just not as quite as exciting.
No. And when I've spoken to other volunteers here in this podcast series, they've always had their own collection that has kind of brought them here. Do you have your own collection of footage and DVD of race meetings, and did you collect VHS of Bathurst, for example, over the years?
Oh yes, I've got my own collection and started with VHSs and DVDs, so yes, I've got quite an extensive bookshelf of materials.
Right, so you could...
That was really the start of what happened, what came into here. A lot of that now has been brought into this operation.
Okay. So do you still hold that content yourself and have the digital version here?
No, I tend to bring the VHS and DVDs into here to hold in the library because it's a historical library, and I hold the DVD versions. It's much easier holding 30 or 40 gig onto a disc which has got 50 hours of video on it. So,
and you've got an area with the videos and bits and pieces. I found that each of the areas honours a particular person inside the foundation. So we've spoken to people about the Spencer Martin room and the Phil Irving room. Which person do you have as an honour?
If there's one person, I'd have to say Leo Gagan. The era there, starting in the 60s, when the Gagan, Bartlett, Jack Brabham, those guys were racing against the international guys in the Tasman series, is probably the era that really appeals to me. But Leo Gagan had a special interest because of the way he developed into so many different cars. And he was actually made a presentation to me when I won the Super Sprint series. So I've always had Gagans as being of special interest, and seeing Pete Gagan race in the 72 Bathurst Easter meeting. Right. So the Gagans have always had a special appeal to me.
Yeah. And I remember seeing some footage, in-car footage, when I was a kid of Bathurst, when I was in the UK, and just looking at what they were doing with the amount of kit they had on the car. And it was fascinating because we never had that in the UK in touring car races. And to watch, on the TV on a Saturday the week after Bathurst, and you'd watch in-car at Bathurst, and you just think that's absolutely amazing, the way that they were doing that. And then they had, the drivers talking to, the commentators along the way. I think Australia was at the forefront of that interaction and that change in the way people saw motorsport from a video and audio perspective.
That's very true. I've actually got a series of developments on those race cams, not just Peter Williamson with his Celica, but going back to, they mounted one on the front corner of a Formula Ford, which I thought was pretty brave, and then the roll bar of a Formula V. And then we got to, unfortunately, recent passing of John French. In 1982, he did a lot of videoing from in-car in Alan Moffat's Ford Falcon GT. And right through to the present day video formatting, it's just, the quality is so much better now, but it was interesting to watch those early days as they developed with a huge camera sitting on the front of a Formula Ford.
Well, this is something where people talk about the latest sort of movies, and I know Brad Pitt's got a movie about Formula One, which I think talks about, it's based on Martin Donnelly's big crash that ended his career, and you look at it and you think there's a lot of CGI, there's a lot of AI, there's a lot of everything going in there. But when you roll it back and look at the reality of what people were doing, and it's so real because it is real. It's not just somebody creating something on a computer and making it work. When you look back at that footage, that's a real guy in that car with a real camera, and it's real life. And it happened on that day. It didn't happen in somebody's mind. And when you start to realise that this stuff has got historic value, because you're looking at everything on the day and preserving that, and being able, as you do, to be able to go to a car club and talk about the reality of what was going on and showing people their cars in the day doing something. It must be absolutely amazing to be able to walk in and show people something they've never seen before.
That's exactly right. I get a huge amount of pleasure from presenting these sort of things, and things like the Lotus Club, the MG clubs, showing them footage from the historical data from race meetings, the MGs in the 30s and 40s, right back to 1939, when a gentleman by the name of Tomlinson won the 1939 Australian Grand Prix in Labourthal, South Australia. And I can show various sort of specially historical things that people are just surprised that that's available in film format, to be perfectly honest. I've actually made contact with the National Food and Film and Sound Archives to collect a few others that I haven't been able to get, like the 1948 Australian Grand Prix, which was held at Point Cook in Victoria. The only place I can get it is from the film archives. So, having contacts like that has been tremendous.
And for you personally, what does it mean to be able to capture all of this content, digitize it, get it into a form that can be shared with future generations?
For me, it feels like a great deal of pleasure that I can add some value to the motor racing heritage and to the education and development of motoring and motorsport within Australia. I can help sell that story.
Yeah.
Probably because in this day and age, people are more visually oriented and are happy to spend time looking at bits and pieces of video format and history more so than taking the time to read a book.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure the books will never go out of style, but video format and the younger generation will be more interested in video and visual formats and presentation.
And I was recently talking to a guy at a car club event who had a really thick book on all of the racing circuits around Australia, and many of which have now gone. We only really have probably 5 or 6 left in the country, probably 1 or 2 per state now. And you look at all of those defunct racing circuits, and if there's footage of those circuits in action, as it were, that really brings a whole new dimension to reading the book and then looking at the footage of cars on the circuit. Because it's okay to look at a map of the circuit, but if you don't understand the undulations and the tightness of the circuit, you lose a lot of the feel of what that circuit was about. And it sounds to me that you've got a growing collection of video now that can show people what something looked like when it was in its heyday.
That's very true. I've actually got another series, believe it or not, on race circuits. So I've gone through and I've actually got the Graham Hill driving around the Surfers Paradise circuit.
Yeah.
As I said, John French driving around Bathurst, and various other people in car driving, whether it's Oran Park, Amaroo Park, Surfers Paradise, Bathurst, all those circuits. I've got a series now of in-car views from driving those circuits. And I think there's great value in showing people what it was really like. Circuits that have gone, as you said.
Yes, and certainly where they've been, built up and are now a housing estate or whatever, to go back and, the housing estate might have specific names that related to its past, but you can't visualize it anymore because it's just a bunch of houses. For then people to even take what you've got and overlay where they are today, and they can see how it's changed, and they can see people, and if you've got somebody like a Graham Hill or Leo Gagan or something in there, that really brings it to life, because that's many people's heroes are from that era.
The interesting thing is people have never heard of some of the circuits, like Caversham in Western Australia, Lowerthal in South Australia, Hume Weir, and I have pictures of people, video of people driving those circuits, which was quite amazing and quite surprising and eye-opening for many people. Yeah.
And how often do you get donations of videos and other footage?
I come in here with one box every week and walk out with 2, and that's been happening for the last 6 months.
Right.
So I'm always getting ongoing collections.
Yes.
A lot of them are VHS, which means I've got to spend the time to convert them into digital format.
Yeah.
But as I said, it's just one of those things that I enjoy doing, to bring them back to life.
Yes.
And to keep them for history purposes.
And so if you get a VHS tape of, for example, 1 hour, how long would that take to convert into a digital form?
I don't have any quick conversions, so basically that's why I have a setup with VHS and Betamax and everything. I play it through the computer and just set and forget it and play it for an hour or so. I have to play the full length. Yeah. So I've actually worn out 2 VHS units in the last 6 months, and I keep asking whether volunteers here if they got any more units that I can borrow, because I keep wearing them out.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are plenty that are heading to the tip that you could use.
The most difficult one was getting a good quality Betamax.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah.
So I've now got 2, and we're doing conversion of a lot of Betamax movies.
And you said the older film you then farm out to specialists, because I guess they can also do some touch-ups and rework on some of that footage for you as well.
It's very true. With the AI, they can actually develop and improve the quality of those considerably now.
Yeah. And what's the future for you here? Are you going to expand into other media formats, or are you just focused on the video, and do you expect it to continue to grow with, having stuff come in and you working on it?
Well, I don't think we'll ever get to the end of converting older tapes to digital, but they've already being asked and by various group members here to develop with the photographic side of things, and do more scanning of that and more presentations on the still photos.
Okay.
The difficulty with the still photos is actually identifying the date, the time, the circuit, and that sort of information is very difficult to find with still photographs.
Yeah.
Most videos you can actually get quite a bit of information out of.
Yeah, out of the data of them, or out of just the structure?
Well, generally I can go through and I'll record the winners and the first three place getters, and then I go to Rod Chivers and we can actually determine what day it was, what race meeting it was, what event it was, and relate it to a race program.
Well, funny about the stills, I follow a few people on Instagram, and one day a picture popped up, well, a couple of pictures in the series, and I looked at them and I thought, that's my uncle. And my uncle used to race an MG midget, and the caption was, Richard Gamble, working on his car, don't know who the other people are. And so the guy who'd taken the photo, early 70s, of Brands Hatch, and he'd made some notes in a notebook about each of the pictures he'd taken. And so I screen grabbed them and I sent them to my uncle in the UK, and I said to him, okay, when was this? Because he can't remember the date. He knows it's early 70s, but he can't remember a lot about it. And who's the guy actually leaning into the car working on the car? Because I can see you and your ovals on one side. And Richard came back to me and he said, well, that was my first race meeting at Brands Hatch. He said, you'll notice that the front wheel arches still haven't yet been painted. I'd only just got them fitted. And that was Stuart, my main sponsor, who was fixing something on the car for me, and that was his daughter, young daughter in the picture. And he was thrilled to bits that I'd sent him pictures he'd never seen of the time. And then when he came back and he was talking about, because one of the pictures was him driving out of the paddock to get ready on the circuit, so he didn't have a helmet on, and he was just sort of cruising through the paddock. And in the distance was his first wife, in classic 70s bell-bottom jeans with a clipboard, so she was obviously going to do the timing for him. And I hadn't noticed her in the first one, and the first time I looked at it. But it was, and I sent a note back to the guy who'd originally posted it saying, no, you got it wrong. I've spoken to my uncle, who's the guy in the overalls, and I gave him a bit more details, and he's come back and said, oh, that's great. Now that fills out another piece, because now I've got other pictures I took around the same time. I can now build that back picture of that race meeting. So that would be a lot harder if you haven't got the pictures and, as they used to do, scribble something on the back of the picture to be able to then figure out what's going on.
Yes. Well, as I said, video generally we get a lot more information, especially with everything from the 60s, which has soundtracks and talking, and you got the names of the drivers, their car details, and you're able to track them back through history for our records here to get more information on it and to fill in the gaps, so to speak.
And I think that's the beauty of the Motoring Heritage Foundation, because you've got all of these items that can be correlated together. So if you've got one piece of information, you can use that to search for other pieces.
True.
And then you build up the picture. And then if we're lucky enough to have some video or audio, that brings a whole new dimension to the research that can be taken place.
Yes. It's actually surprising how it's built up to the stage we now have 4 terabytes or 4,000 gigabytes of video footage of race meetings from 1928 to 2000. It's just amazing.
I'm amazed that you've got footage that far back. That is absolutely fabulous that people have held on to that, and now it's being safely looked after in a new format. so that even if the old format does wear out and disintegrate, which it likely will, you've got the record of it.
Well, there was some very good stuff came through from the cinematographers in the 30s and 40s, and the movie tone news and all those sort of things. Things like the Red X trials and some of the race meetings, or Jack Brabham wins at Nublar in 1960. There's a lot of cinematographer, movie tone type news, which was very good quality stuff, actually. Very good quality.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your time today, Peter. It's been good to talk about that and to understand what you do here and the work that you're doing, because, as I said, it does mean that you've got a complete picture of an event or something that's happened, or at least people can go back and look at the vehicles in their day being used. And again, that's something that I'm sure, as people want to find out more about family, or they want to find out about a particular event, there is something here in this organization that enables them to get a clear picture of it. And as you're creating more and more of these files, that's more memories of things that really show how far Australia has come with the vehicles and what they've done with them over now decades, nearly 100 years.
Well, my next little project is to work with the Council of Motoring Organisations to find out history from the car clubs. We haven't developed enough about the car clubs here at this stage in our history bank. So, we'll go back to those car clubs, and some of them have been operating, like the Alfa Romeo Club, for 50 years. There's the Mustang Club, who had the meeting up at Bathurst last weekend. So we want to develop the history of those car clubs and grab their information and bring it back into our library as well.
Well, I'm a member of the Maserati Club here, and I've probably got about 40 CDs of either images or video taken over the years from when that was founded 30, 40 plus years ago. So maybe we'll have a chat later on.
That'd be good. Like I say, the Jaguar Drivers Club is one club that's come to the party, and we hold a lot of their history here.
Okay.
And there's probably 128 gigabytes of video footage just from the Jaguar Drivers Club. That's the start of the project.
Well, we'll have a chat about that later on offline.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
It was great to catch up with Peter and learn more about his work with the Foundation. Over time, the Foundation will become a one-stop shop for all things automotive relating to Australia. Last year, the Foundation released an economic value study of the historic vehicle industry, which suggests that owners of older cars contribute over $9 billion annually to the economy looking after their vehicles. In reality, though, this is just scratching the surface of how important the automotive industry still is to the country, despite not having any of the major manufacturers build cars locally. If you would like to volunteer to help the Foundation with the curation of documents, magazines, books and videos, head over to motorheritage.org.au/volunteer and register your interest. And talking of historic cars, as we like to do on this podcast, there are some great events coming up. And on topic, Shannon's Insurance is holding an audio-visual workshop in Melbourne on the 12th of July called Cinaloot Creative Workshops. Also on the 12th in Sydney is the Session Automotive Exhibition at Sydney Olympic Park. And moving around the country on the 13th is the Holden Out for a Cure at Redlands in Queensland. This is in aid of the Cancer Council. New South Wales Formula V and the HQs are racing at the Sydney Motorsports Park on the 26th and 27th of July, and the Historic Nights for July is at the Entertainment Quarter in Sydney on the 31st. And then the Winton Festival of Speed is on the 1st to the 3rd of August. If you have a club or event that you would like highlighted, send an email to stephen@motoringweekly.com.au and I'll be in touch. And don't forget to subscribe to your favourite podcast player, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Samsung or YouTube, and get the episodes delivered as they're published, or simply subscribe to the website motoringweekly.com.au, and you'll get notified when a new episode is published there too. and you can listen to all the episodes there or simply subscribe through a podcast app. I'm Stephen Wells, and you've listened to Motoring Weekly, the podcast for the Australian historic road and racing community.